There's something uniquely disorienting about being hurt by the right words. Not cruel words, not cold words. Words that sounded like love. The ones that made you feel seen or understood. And later, when you tried to explain what happened, you couldn't point to the moment it went wrong. Because on the surface, everything looked like care. Jung had a name for what happens in those moments. He called it participation mystique, documented in his collected works, a state where the distinction between self and other partially dissolves, where the boundary between what I feel and what you feel becomes permeable, almost theoretical. In ordinary relationships, some degree of this is inevitable. The earliest stages of love involve a kind of merging. We project what we haven't integrated. We feel briefly completed. The danger comes when one person cannot move beyond that stage. When they cannot individuate, cannot see the other as truly separate, as someone with needs distinct from their own. They relate not to the actual person, but to the image they've constructed. The projection stays in place, and the relationship becomes, in a very specific sense, a relationship with themselves. This, Jung observed, is the psychological structure beneath a great deal of what we now call narcissistic relating. It has a language, specific phrases that arise from this structure naturally, not always consciously designed, but consistently shaped by the same mechanism. Words that carry the grammar of love while serving the logic of control. 4 of them appear more consistently than the others. The first, nobody understands you like I do. Said early enough, in the right tone, this sentence can feel like the most intimate thing anyone has ever said. It sounds like recognition. It sounds like home. What it also does structurally is place another person between you and everyone else. The understanding is exclusive. The connection is irreplaceable, which means any damage to it is your loss, not theirs. The phrase doesn't just say, I see you, it says, without me, you are unseen. Jung wrote about what happens when we project the anima or animus onto another person. When the projection is active, an absolute effective attachment to the object arises. Not love, exactly. Attachment organized around what the other represents. The recognition you feel isn't recognition of who you actually are. It's recognition of what they've projected onto you. Their own unlived material wearing your face. The intimacy is real. What it's about is not. The second, I only do this because I love you. This one has a particular architecture. It takes something that hurt you, a criticism, a control, an intrusion, and explains it as devotion. The love becomes both the reason for the harm and the answer to any objection. If you accept the premise that love is the motive, then your discomfort becomes your misunderstanding. You felt hurt where you should have felt cared for. Your response to pain becomes evidence of your failure to perceive correctly. Jung describes how the persona can be used not only to present the self, but to manage others' perception of our actions. When harm is dressed in the language of love consistently enough, the person experiencing it begins to inherit the confusion. It is no longer what happened to me. It becomes what I failed to understand about what happened to me. That shift from clarity to self-doubt is the real function of the phrase. The third, I can't help the way I feel about you. On the surface, raw passion. Love as something larger than the person experiencing it. What it also does is remove accountability for what that feeling produces. The possessiveness, the jealousy, the constant contact. These become unchosen. The person isn't doing these things. They are being done through them. The feeling is beyond their control, which means its consequences are also beyond their responsibility. In Jung's framework, this is the language of projection without awareness. What is experienced as overwhelming love is often the anima or animus speaking at full volume. And an archetype, Jung was clear, has no interest in the individual who carries it. It wants expression, not relationship. The fourth, after everything I've done for you. This one arrives later, during conflict, usually when the other person has expressed a need, a boundary, a complaint, and it does something specific to the structure of the conversation. It replaces the present with an archive. Whatever is being discussed now, what you felt, what you needed, what happened, is recontextualized against a historical account of sacrifice. The relationship becomes a ledger, and the ledger has only one column: what was given, never what was taken. This is the shadow speaking in the language of sacrifice. What the person cannot acknowledge in themselves gets projected outward. Your needs become demands. Your hurt becomes ingratitude. Your attempt to have a conversation becomes evidence of everything they've endured. Jung's observation on the shadow was precise. It contains everything we find unacceptable about ourselves, projected onto whoever is closest. And nothing is projected more reliably than the taking we cannot name in ourselves. I recognized the second phrase while reading Memories, Dreams, Reflections for the first time. My empty apartment. Winter, 8 months after my divorce. I came to the passage where Jung writes about the psyche's tendency to present what is unconscious in the form of what appears most noble. I set the book down. My ex-wife used to say it quietly, a little tired. I push you because I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. It had sounded like love for years, like the kind of love that sees past what you can see in yourself. Reading Jung that night, I understood it differently. The pushing hadn't been about what she saw in me. It had been about who she needed me to be, for reasons that had nothing to do with me. The belief she expressed wasn't in me. It was in the image of me she'd constructed. And when I didn't fit that image, it wasn't the image that adjusted. The disorientation of that recognition wasn't anger. It was quieter. The feeling of understanding, for the first time, that I had been in a relationship with someone who had, in a mostly unconscious way, never quite been in a relationship with me. Jung would not have called this calculated. He would have called it unconscious. That doesn't make it harmless, but it changes what the right response is. Naming these 4 phrases isn't a weapon. It isn't meant to turn love into something you need to defend yourself from, or to reduce the people who said them to simple explanations. What Jung offers, through participation mystique, through anima projection, through his observations on what happens when someone cannot individuate, is a framework for understanding why certain words can feel so much like love and still leave you less yourself than when you started. The phrases work not because the person using them is a liar. They work because they carry the genuine structure of love, recognition, devotion, passion, sacrifice, while serving something else underneath, something that couldn't quite see you clearly enough to choose differently. Knowing the mechanism doesn't make the feeling retroactively wrong. It makes the recognition possible. And the only thing more disorienting than being hurt by the right words is finally having a name for what those words were doing all along.